Good evening and welcome to the Cohoes City School District Board of Education meeting and district-wide safety public hearing. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:03 p.m. Please note our emergency exits. There's two on this side here and the front door that you came in. We would meet out front. If I could please ask that you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic states of the nation, with the soul, to justice. Thank you. We have a roll call.
Mr. Jackson.
Here.
Mrs. Snager.
Excused.
Mrs. Gender.
Excused.
Mrs. Paradis.
Excused.
Mr. Jerome.
Here.
Mrs. Burwell.
Here.
And Mrs. Geller.
I'm here. At this time, I'll turn it over to Superintendent O'Shea for our district reports.
Thank you, everyone. Welcome. First up, our district-wide safety public hearing. The safety plan was still on our website on the 26th because there is a 30-day period, public comment period. This is the hearing. And then there will be a recommendation for adoption at the August 27th meeting. Will be entered into our business portal by October 1st. So the safety plan is really a document, it's a public document, it's posted on our website, as I mentioned, that shows our approach to addressing safety district-wide. And there's a number of components, including training, drills, district resources, a chain of command. So you might recall a couple of years ago when we really revised the code, we also went deep and made a lot of revisions on this plan. So really our only changes this year are the addition of some things new that we are doing that we've heard over the year. Therapeutic crisis intervention training led by Rachel Marcel. We have some other in-district trainers. We've had 65 staff members up until this summer train. And since then, we have 20 additional. We have 7. So one thing that we have is now mandatory training for any teacher assistant or aide for the self-contained special education classroom. It's mandatory for our social workers, and we would encourage you also to take that. Some other changes. This is kind of hot off the press, but I believe that the middle school is going to be talking about moving to the positivity project and having conversations around P2 in the future to make it a secondary focus with second step of the military. Some yonder pouches, we added that as a safety measure. Freshman seminar, 9th grade road to success. Also, all for your support. So that is campus safety monitors, school safety officers. Now all of the buildings have them. And then this year, the addition of the lead school safety staff leader, I think that will make a big difference. So those were the changes that were added to our plan from previous years. Building level plans, those are not book documents, so I will be sharing them with you in the executive session next time, August 13th. Again, with recommended for approval at the August 27th meeting. So these are also shared with local law enforcement and the state police. So the language has changed a little bit. Staff will be getting new documents this year. Protocol is very similar, but just the language as recommended by New York State Education Department. So you might recall before it was called hold in place. Now it's hold, secure lockout, lock down, evacuate, and shelter. Secure lockout, the language was changed to make sure that there wasn't any confusion between lockout and lockdown. So those are the main components of that. Do you have any questions? So I have more to say later, don't worry, but I would like to turn this over to Tim Lundell to talk about the resource allocation review project.
Let's stand up for this. Last spring, spring of '24, we were notified by the New York State Education Department and invited to participate in the resource allocation review project. It's a project that state ed must carry out as per their plan with the federal government around student achievement. And their plan called for us to look at all the districts across the state, identify districts that might need some support, and ensuring that they can develop systems to those achievement goals, particularly in subgroups as they do the analysis. Cohoes was one of 18 districts across the state that were invited to participate in this program. The program comes with planning development process. We have been through that process from approximately July last year through the first part of this year, through March when our plan was finally completed and submitted to CSD. And that plan was required to be 2 or 3 dimensions out of 10 different areas that SED identified for districts to take a look at. One of them was financial. In other words, how do we spend money to drive those dollars towards where they're needed most to close achievement gaps? And so all districts participating had to develop a plan for addressing that finance portion. Then we could choose 2 additional dimensions. We chose one, and that dimension is we chose one that dimension is around teacher quality, teacher leadership. So the vision and framework that in place in the front end of our plan includes our vision statement around the idea of preparing students for success in tomorrow's world. It's a future-oriented statement, but affects the work that we do each day so that when they cross the stage, they're prepared for tomorrow, into college, or workforce, or into the military. We've also defined and identified the key beliefs that the system holds as adopted by world education, high expectations for all students, positive school climate and culture, future-ready knowledge and skills when they leave high school, and the efficiency and equity of resources in their allocation to where the knowledge are most necessary. And then we grounded the work that we intend to do in the idea of full child education. We have to not only develop the academic skills and academic knowledge of students, but also tend to their social needs as well. Under Dimension 1, we identified a core initiative. We identified once we tried to analyze student data and analyze financial data. We found there was a challenge that our Envision system didn't talk about with our school tool system. And so they're collecting student data to try to understand the flow of dollars from federal government to the state to the district and then into our budget was not a simple process. We also found that our situation in that was not 18 districts. Probably at 90% of the districts experienced the same. So we identified this as a partnership with the idea that if we can't connect dollars to the student subgroups because the systems can't talk to one another, we have to do something about that so that we can get information from the two systems. An accurate assessment of the systems. We also have identified 2 schools in the district to participate in this program. So April Lansing is an elementary school, is impacted this and possible enforcement school impacted as well. We chose those 2 buildings because April Lansing has been on the support, targeted support for intervention. And the middle school has been as a potential school targeted support. So that will be the case for those buildings. SCD strongly encourage districts to have these grant dollars flow to those buildings. Really do some adequate evaluation of what the systems are in those buildings so that we can make some improvements for students. We know that in Lansing, the per pupil expenditure is very low in comparison to the other buildings. We also know that there are significant, especially with some of our minority groups. And those needs directly impact staffing and resource allocation as we understand. In the middle school, as you get to the secondary level, the scheduling process becomes more complex. We need more tracks and unique programming students in high school. So that drives part of the people expenditure. It's difficult to understand how the dollars flow to each different content area for each subject. In middle school, we have special needs with that. English is a new language. 7 weeks is all the students who must going to only come together. And then there are groups that maybe data certain subgroups we see that minority students have a higher disproportionate. So we need to look at that. And again, those issues directly impact staffing and resource allocation in the middle school. So how do we provide support for those identified schools? Well, we need a more effective data system, one that talks in a dynamic way back and forth between the 2 sets, so that we can make more effective decisions and track the per pupil expenditures in an accurate way. We need to be able to develop tailored interventions, particularly in the schools that are in the targeted for support categories, and do that on a subgroup basis of needs. And we hope that if we can do those things, that will improve the outcomes in terms of data science, state testing, and internal. We have developed strategies using the theory of action platform. So this is an if-then statement. If we had a data system capable of filtering multiple student subgroups and tracking per pupil expenditures, then the district and the individual school principals could develop more targeted and informed resource allocation plans and promote greater equity and meeting student needs. So that's the theoretical statement. We have some strategies that we're going to use to do just that. We've been evaluating internal data for the last year, trying to evaluate the financial data that goes along with it. We use vision and ultimately our internal data from school tool ends up in the data warehouse in the Tableau system, and we're getting those 2 things to talk with. We've defined required data elements. Stacy has been in communication with our programmer, Capital Region OCs and Merit, so that we can accurately get expenditures, student subgroups, and different types of assessments that we want to make. Once we build the merged system in our partnership with Merit, that process is ongoing this summer. Last time we talked to Gordon, I think I saw an email last week seeking additional refined information. He's been working on the programming for this process for about 4 or 5 months since going back to March or April. So he's developing that system. We should be able to get some glimpse of it before school. In dimension 2, we identified an important issue as a consistently low student proficiency rate across the district compared to state average. So we looked at 3A testing. We saw that our typical proficiency rate was about 38%, and the state average was about 51%. So we need to take a look at that gap and what's driving that gap. Can we drive dollars to close that gap? On Regents exams, there's about a 10-point difference between our Regents performance and the state average. So we want to take a look at what creates that gap. There are two specific challenges in Lansing. The 3A proficiency rate is about 43%, and in the African American subgroup, it's 23%. So that 20-point gap is something we really need to improve on. Let's take a look at what are the elements within that gap that are driving that student performance. And how are we driving the right amount of dollars, driving them to the right kind of programming and supports? What changes do we need to make? And at middle school, this is the overall 6 to 8 proficiency is about 55%. In our student with disabilities subgroup, it's about 10.2%. This is 25 points. It's quite big. We need to understand more effectively so we can be guidance. So the theory of action the district develops and adopts a district-wide multi-tiered system of student support and defines data cycles for identifying tiered interventions, and then provides professional learning to the staff, and all students will receive the supports that are needed for their individual success. So over the course of this coming year is to build out an MTSS system, and we want to do 2 data cycles for the SMTs, about 6 weeks each. And we're doing about students, providing some strategies, and then carrying out those strategies for intervention, and coming back to the table 6 weeks later and assessing, where students are, how effective this intervention has been. Now, to do that effectively, we need to know exactly what students do. That's why the data and some is very important. So we plan on engaging that process this year, and on targeted professional development to go along with it. We partner with Better Futures. Looking Better Futures is a local nonprofit organization that is branched off from New Albany, and it's become an agency. So we're going to partner with them and get rid of the training of staff so that they become church engineers perspective. This is the budget allocation. The total money is allocated in 2 phases, separated into dimension 1 and dimension 2 categories. In dimension 1, we're spending about $26,000, $7,000 for merging data system, and we're training for facilitator. The fees for this facilitator goes in now. For dimension 2, we're spending about $212,000, and that by and large will be a contract fee for building the futures. We're hiring some internal coordinators to the coordinators in the TSS, and then the hours for the staff, some and materials and supplies. And it totals about $239,000 in total grant funding we applying for, and the objective is to build a system that's sustained into the future without the necessary $200,000. So we know this point, I'll take questions.
So first, thank you for this enormous amount of work. I appreciate all the time that both of you have put into this. And I guess there's a couple things that I'm curious about that you mentioned. So initially, you were talking about the per pupil allocations being significantly different at Abram Lansing's. And I just wonder why that is, or how that could be if we do, a zero-based budget and we look at, everything from year to year. The per pupil allocation, I don't know if I said that right, but just wondering how that could have happened and if we put things in place to make sure that we can mitigate those types of things moving forward. I mean, that's like a base value thing, right? Like we're talking about a grant, but really overall, it's like, okay, how do our systems run? How can we
So Rachel and I participated in the early part of this where we reviewed the data. So when you look at the size of the building, so for example, Harmony Hill has, students. And the slightly smaller school has 3 self-contained special education classrooms. Lansing has 2, so Harmony has 2. So when we looked at it that way, we were able to say, well, it's because of self-contained at Van Sky and when we dug deep, that was really where we were looking to at teacher salaries, veteran teachers versus teachers. So if you compare seniority and salaries of teachers, so when we looked at paper, that's how it came up. We do a, I think we do a really good job of through our budget process targeting, needs like zero-based. What this is going to allow us to do, though, we say, here's the amount of funding that goes to student disabilities, right? Well, there's the amount of funding that goes to ENL. This is going to really allow us to say, here's the amount of funding that goes to students who are ENL. And here's the amount that goes to students with disabilities with significant needs, with moderate needs, with mild needs. And that's something we can't currently do. We can't say looking across the subject populations target.
So the initial review was an expenditure based on teacher student ratio and then teacher salary. Really, not necessarily programming. We're not looking at cost of program. We're looking at teacher student ratio and salary.
We looked at everything. We looked at
data. What this does is make everything more data driven. So if you know who your kids are, who are in, say, the lowest 20th percentile, say in reading, and you know that those students, whatever building they're in, intervention, which will then allow you to make decisions.
And this Tableau integration, when you're looking at developing reports, what does a report look like? Just high overview, not asking for specific, like what are we trying to get out? Are we trying to just filter out, our line item budget versus our student demographics? Like what types of information are we trying to focus on? I know that you said that you're trying to make this sustainable, which is wonderful. But if that integration happens, is there a third-party connector that will have to continue to be maintained annually? I guess, development of reports are different in different platforms, but.
I think I can give you a high level answer.
Yeah, high level's good.
I want to step on Stacy's games with specific coding and that kind of thing with the budget. The overarching problem is that the different data systems don't talk to one. Getting the systems to talk to one program for it. Once narrative does, then it's done. And part of the elements that are part of the considerations in the program process include what budget codes do we want to look at and include in the expenditures for some of those subgroups we want to look at. What kind of interventions or programs. So the more specifically we can define those elements, that's been the focus of the conversation back and forth since we had our last meeting. It was early. And his folks, his supervisors, and he had a specific list. He's communicated back to get clarification, so he knows exactly what codes to include in the program. So that we're sure we're counting the dollars to see what we're actually spending. And probably without the systems talking to one another, we have a general idea. We know these dollars flow from this grant that's coded over here, but maybe it wasn't precise enough. And I think probably most districts have experienced that. And so I think there's an opportunity, certainly dollar efficiency. Because now we're able to clearly know what we load specific codes with at the beginning of the budget in terms of revenues and where those dollars will go. Where system year over year, see the patterns that take place. So, okay, Stacey, anything you want to chime in a little bit on that?
Still under the development. Yeah, never talk.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of like trying to get a vision of what that resource provides.
The idea is to get more detail, to make decisions, just generalize. So the way that we account for our expenses or I love the department, we know which building departments, but the specifics are not in the financial information. So it's looking to leverage all the information to bridge as much information as we can to be able to drill down to make more informed decisions.
So now I understand that this resource allocation grant is a grant and it's a singular, time and place where we do this work, we get this money and then we don't get it anymore. So we have revamped our budget process in the past. Will this again contribute to the budget process overall, like moving forward? We'll be looking at making changes to the budget process because of the work that comes from this, like in the future?
I don't think so.
I don't need you to be like, I'm crystal ball, but I'm just saying, like, I
So
would think that you would want to maybe make some adjustments.
so plan is to adjust our return on investment process with the buildings, leaders, and what is brought forward. There's been a request for more revenues. Should be able to help us with not only that request to say this is what we would like, but then to show the effects of interventions and programs. Because if I can say that this group of students, third grade at Abraham Manson, receive this amount of dollars in Wilson training, that's the outcome in terms of data. That's
the year over budget, right, with ROI, it's the never, this is the amount of money spent, this was result. Everything that's, it does this, but there's this.
And so when this resource allocation grant, and we did get approved, we have the funding, was available to us, and we know that something we need, it seemed like an ideal way to try to get, and it's still developing phase. It was a pretty arduous process to get here, and some districts not as, some districts did not stay in the green.
Not all 18 districts completed the planning process. And the plan is like 35 pages long. Very rigorous. This system would be able to be more clear on decision. Which are not. Human students. We're not putting vendors on the rules. We'll be able to know that's excellent. Students. We have reading deficiencies. And we see this kind of change.
It'll give us an opportunity, because we're doing different things in each school, to realize what programs move the needle that we were trying.
So my last question is on the Building Better Futures program. I know we've talked a little bit about some of the other folks that we've had in, train the trainer type of situations. I'm just curious what that group actually does. And what would they be training staff on or admin on? I'm not aware.
I believe. Earlier, she's been with NTSSI and to Albany, leading pilot schools for New York State in the NTSS process. I was just at a training for the last 2 days, so really that academic side and the data cycles and what data, what percentiles, what cut scores give you student tier 2, tier 3 support. She'll be really helping that side of it with our being sort of coordinators and that place. This is really all getting us to that data have been placed. That's how decisions should be made. Based around the data, kind of working in your school, how many kiddos are at this percentile for being. Those are the lowest 20%, they automatically are in tier 2 intervention. You're taking your data sets, you're taking your state data, you have iReady data. And you're taking those data sets, taking your cut scores, and then you're saying this is automatic and this student need intervention, and we don't need to kind of meet about that. We have these sets of data that are telling us they need more. Being able to work that and doing data cycles to see if the intervention is that. Yes, go.
So the board will see the contract with Building Better Futures at the next board meeting. We're having a preliminary meeting with them August 1st to really help refine the scope of work. Something I think is important to know that although year 1 are pilot buildings, year 2 and 3 spread throughout all of our buildings, and starting this year, will be a district-wide representatives from each. You'll also see a job description for the coordinator position. So then in Lansing School has added for this one. Now we'll have the next meeting too.
So that's our meeting steps. We're looking to develop a district-wide team so we can expand this come to completion. We'll have a team down to implement the same kind of strategies in terms of data process in the other developers as well. And then we're establishing a handbook so that we have a manual of doing things. And then we'll be meeting with Gordon Bettner to review the data analytics system, hopefully by mid-month in August. And then we have a meeting with our S&D technician who works with us as a progress through the meeting. Get some guidance for us. That would be going, hopefully, school starts. If there are no other questions, thanks.
Thank you.
So I also want to thank Tim. Today was day 1 of our administrative council meeting. We met at BOE so that everyone was able to see the CTE building and the offerings that were available. So the day was guided by Tim, and I just want to thank him. It was very eventful. You can tell his voice is a little hoarse today, and I'm going to put you on the spot. Or would you mind talking about the initial impetus about the wall? You're saying about.
Oh, So, Peg asked me to do something deep with the administrators as a retreat workshop. Needed clarification on what she meant. So we had a long meandering conversation about where we are, where we would like to go. And there are lots of great foundations that we have here. I think the administrative team is highly seasoned and very skilled. Put kids at the center. I think we have a really hardworking staff, receptive to constructive criticism and open to dialogue and feedback. Committed to the community and committed to students. And I see students every day that are just, they have their eyes up, and want to be engaged. Some have significant challenges that prevent them handling themselves so that they can be engaged effectively. We need to work at that. And then we have these opportunities. This whole RAR process. This is a pretty significant infusion of government's money to help us build a system that we can use in perpetuity to be effective in working. We have trauma skills school that is also a grant. And that will be framework skills and communication tools that teachers and administrators will have to advance their kids, take care of social needs, while giving them some sense of a plan. So with all these opportunities, why not us? And why not now? Why not us to say, well, let's be a shooting star and be the crown jewel. And why not now? Well, we have the resources, we have human capital, we have aspiration. Those things should come together for great progress. And so, we begin today talking about why this is important, the kinds of changes we need to make. And we have great foundations in the program. Strong people, they need to dedicate people. These need to all swim in the same. So we did a deep dive on mission and vision statement that you've all adopted, what it means and what it looks like when you to a student, try to describe a student that possesses those things. And then we looked at the beliefs and the commitments. And each subgroup in the room had a belief that they had to pull apart, unpack, and make a whole list, a categorical list, or in one case, we had a graphic artist with a house and a frame and all these facts. And so it was very interesting as a facilitator to see the different learning styles. And so, all meant to give strong command, deep command of those beliefs. When you're chasing a vision, if you just have a vision, you don't have any idea about how to get there, it's kind of like just having a wish. But when you have some core beliefs that you're standing, and those beliefs are centered on kids, and kids are the object of the work, then really great things can happen when people begin to understand how those beliefs play in their daily practice. So when we talk about future-ready knowledge and skills, what does that mean? And slide after slide, video after video today from great educator forums, examples that we looked at today, all the language was the language that is in our vision or values. It's the language that we're using in our programs. So we determined today that our mission daily this year needs to focus on engagement, students engaged in learning, staff engaged in instructing, staff engaged in working together. And we all need to use the same language. So we're looking at identifying that language, it's really critical. And we want to be intentional about how we design the programs, how we design the schedules, how we assign people to this, how we collect data and talk about it, and then use it for decision. That intentionality, your vision and values creates purpose. And it's the purpose that causes hearts to come and say, I'm going to be engaged in this. And I know that feels fluffy to say it, but I've seen it. And it can happen fast. And I think we're poised to have it happen. As a people and systems that we have in place, it's just a little leadership, a little guidance, and a little consciousness about it will make a difference. And so I'm really excited to give these kinds of resources that people and you would commend for having an articulated vision along with a set of beliefs that can guide people. So it's a very forward thinking. Is that right?
Sounds like a very engaging meeting. Love it. Great. We have known what you're saying about our staff and about what we have here in this, like I said, single, point, to be able to achieve. So I think.
So I have some updates. I've asked, first of all, for a construction update to be presented at our next board meeting. But in the meantime, I can fill you in on the walking track. So I'm working with Bill, Percy, and Joe. And the recommendation was to restrict public access until at least August 25th, when they expected to be turned over, weather permitting. We sent out notification to parents, and it's on our website with the date of August 27th. In a couple of days, if we're able to change that, we will. In the meantime, CS Arch is working on the recommendation for the type of locking system that we discussed on the fence. So there was, and I think what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about why till the 25th, and it really ties into the type of work that ended up needing to be done. And I didn't tell Bill or Stacy that I was going to talk about this. I have it clearly laid out by Joe, but if I start to stumble, you can just help. But so the milling was completed the week of July 14th. And then everybody looked to see if there was any more remediation needed. And so there was a couple of areas that really needed removal and replacement all the way down to the subbase. And then there was a significant amount of binder. Of course, it's the asphalt that provides the durability. So when they looked at this, Mr. Jackson, they looked at it not only for now, for the future, and how do we really say Mr. Jackson? He'll know why. They looked at it to say, okay, how are we going to do this in a way that will last, and so that we're not just needing to do this again, which meant it was a big undertaking. And then they also determined that the entirety of the high school parking lots needed this binder course as well. So before the top finish can be installed. So that's why there was a lot. It wasn't just coming in paving and now we're ready. So that did change the timeline. I think it was very difficult to even come up with a timeline for a while as to when this would be complete. And I know you're still meeting with Laura and Jeff on a weekly basis as things evolve.
When you unearth all that off of all that acreage, if there are things that you can't see, there are sections up there that look so much better than I expected them to based on what they visually look like. How many potholes will fit in one square yard, right? But there are sections that we never expected, particularly to parking lots, that were so dug, so deteriorated. The reason those people decided to put binder and topper on those, it was, when you looked at the labor dollars that were going to repair these sections, it was just simply less expensive to start fresh. Student lot, not nearly as deteriorated, road that way up to Harmony, same thing. That will not nearly the amount of intensive labor and reconstruction surveys. So you're also moving around. We're moving around now. If you go out there and look, there's a lot of fresh asphalt. I go back. You can't. You've got drainage over. You've got baseball field that's been unearthed for its own drainage. You've got a lot of heavy equipment. So now there are sections, you say, why did they pay here when they paid here and here? It's because you've got enough heavy equipment and materials still moving. So now it's getting out of the way of yourself to do a little bit. So now we're playing that game. What's that?
I mean, I think we're all very appreciative of doing a thorough job. We know that it hasn't been that long since we have had paving done, especially that front lot, what seemed to be, the most recent, and you're saying it's in terrible condition. I understand the timeline is hard to nail down. I feel like for us, it's just a communication piece. It is kind of, one of the hubs of our city. And so, just making sure folks know and understand when they should stay away and when they can come back. I think that's kind of the priority, not the amount of time that it's taking to get it done. Certainly, of course, we would hope that it does happen before we welcome kids back. But, more so just access and communication. That's kind of, I think, and I don't mean to speak for everyone, but after having conversations, I think that, our priority was making sure that people had an awareness of what was happening and when.
And Mr. Darcy, if I had known that you were going to be here today, I would not have had to learn about it.
We stuck in the back.
Thank you. Our younger punch update, so communication, as you know, went out at the end of June. It's going to go again at the end of this week. Tonight, the central policy is being adopted. The meeting, which is to be held on August 18th, we're going to let everyone know it's going to be changed here because of construction at the high school, so it will take place in the CMS library. Both middle school and high school have a solid plan for training and rollout, pouches, suite of communication out with the direction to the website. And continue to work on that. Any questions on that? And then all programming, alternative programming. So we're still awaiting word from SED regarding the viability of spending city vineyard. Right, from CSR just pursuing this. In the meantime, there have been walkthroughs of things at the middle school. Tomorrow, Bill is going to walk through with Laura and Heather. We talked about the entrance to upstairs. There's also an area for the gym, so there are some possibilities. We'll have more information for you on that. Teachers have been meeting and receiving training, all signed up for the project-based learning cohort. I received a request from the secondary admin regarding the possibility of an year statement, so I just wanted to go through that a little bit. So I'll share, and I won't go through everything, but this person would really maintain a database to help with grade tracking and student performance, would work with the teachers to monitor attendance and interventions, the main contact video to the dean and AP for behavior-related concerns, and then communicate with the counselor regarding scheduling, oversee IEP 8504 compliance, assist with family outreach and engagement, and then work with Ben Williams because we are still going to arrange and schedule visits to the next center for hands-on. And we're looking at a stipend of between 22 and 50. So just wanted to talk about that. So share this with everyone. Especially as you're getting this out of the ground, this would really help us have a key. And I don't know, Laura, if you want to add anything to that, or I read all your books.
I'm not even sure what you said at this moment.
That's just for secondary.
Yeah, so the alternative program is grades 8 and 10.
I mean, I think it's a good ask. I think it's great to have, somebody available to be a contact person, whether it is on site or off site. I mean, somebody kind of needs to take on the responsibility to coordinate. I know that this is kind of a reaction to a problem, not necessarily saying that this is a long-term solution, but at least, if we're gonna do it, we might as well do it well. And if that means, a stipend, I would be okay with that. I don't know how you guys feel. What do you guys think?
Makes sense, yeah.
And then finally,
I'm sorry, but the stipend from that would be kind of a similar to teacher.
about half of the teacher leader. We were thinking 2,400 teacher leaders, 4,800. More concentrated area. We would be working. CTA, we've already discussed this, too, so. Okay. And then I just want to ask one additional item to talk about. So, in addition to the director of special programs and assistant director of special programs, there's been conversations around an additional position. So I wanted to share what my thoughts are about working with. Talked with Flannery, secondary teacher leaders, talked with union, talked with our consultant, Susan Sloma, and need, as you know, there's a number of CSD meetings. So the need would be to have an additional staff member who would be able to, now they would not do all the meetings, but they would be able to assist the meetings K-12. We don't want to target, 6, 12 or K-5. What would happen is the director, assistant director, and the CSE chairperson would really sit down, look at the meetings, determine which were the best. We would want the CPSE meetings to still be done by the assistant director, the out of district meetings to be done by the director. This is only draft, but it says coordination of annual review meetings. There's a few typos, sorry. Facilitate the meetings, in conjunction, help oversee the development, implementation of monitoring of IEPs, provide support to staff on progress monitoring. This one is an area that is new. for the past couple of years. So when our students are on suspension, the state now, they are supposed to and have been receiving their services, both teachers and related services, but we need to have a clearly developed tracking system to be able to show that this is happening for disciplinary change in placements. So this person would help to provide the oversight and supervision of that. And then, assist in compliance, assist families, and then other tasks as assigned, would be, either special education or psychology certification. And we're talking about potential of having this be, a teacher in special education. So I just wanted to share this with you, we'll be then sharing it, further to start here.
So I know our budget review process went through, we've gone through audits with special education. It has consistently come up that we need additional support. I know the CSD meetings are mandatory. I'm not a director, I don't know what, resources, but, if we feel like this is going to meet a need, I do know that we were just actually talking about how reporting has changed and it's gotten more extensive.
It's gonna be fun.
So I was gonna say, where's the money coming from?
So this could be funded this year through the Stacy, which is the bigger one?
611.
611, through the 611 grant. There's special education grant 611 and 619. So I believe this year it can be funded through 611, and then it would be budget process and discussion for future years.
So would this be, are we looking, posting,
As
public posting,
as
is
soon as-
internal posting, how's?
If it's a teacher on special assignment, it would be an internal posting. What would happen is if there were no internal applicants, then it would be a public posting. We've done that before. So for example, our social emotional learning project, Harmony Hill, she joined us through this process and is now in the counseling area. But we would start internally through the posting.
So with this, the way that we're looking at it through a TOSA lens, obviously there wouldn't be any supervisory capacity for, any of our staff, but that still allows them to have decision-making, to finalize night, with this support, with this structure, the way that this
Yes,
is.
lead the committee on special education to make the decisions based on the child's needs and provide some additional for staff. And it does, and it then allows more time for the director and assistant director to really focus, more intensive meetings, needs and really the supervision and evaluation of staff of the program.
Looking at it for start.
We would like to look at start sooner than September if possible. We'd like to post and as soon as possible, and then see if potentially we can for the start. It all depends, But also have some, even if it's not replacement, just summer training.
Yeah, will they be looking at things out? Or that there's
I think in the beginning it makes the sense to work at PHF where the files are, where everything is. But then also to, yeah.
Question?
Seems like a need.
Any issue? District our size, I think, we're already, we're supported in that space. I have 2 directors, 2 assistant directors, 2 CSD chairs. So I'm okay with it.
Oh, I'm done, yes.
So I wanted to provide an update on reserves and recommendations for reserve funding. So I did provide the report that was presented last fall. There's no changes to the report. It's just a reminder of what our funding priorities are. And really for the benefit of our newest board member, so that you can familiarize yourself with the report. So annually, after each audit, it's the close of the fiscal year, I make recommendations to, for our reserves. I give a list of what our reserves are when they were established, what their balances are, and then what the need is gonna be for the upcoming year. And then we fund, once the fiscal year is final, and we know where we stand financially, then I make a recommendation to fund that reserve from the June 30 balance. Okay, so we said last fall that the priorities were capital and capital reserve. So we have an existing capital reserve that was established 2018. That is exhausted. Yeah, it was established in 2018 for a 10-year period, $5 million. We've had 3 phases. On the last vote, that was the last piece of that 5 million. So that's going to be totally expended. So we do have in this budget, we have an HVAC audit because we know we have a lot of systems that need to be updated. And also we have that new heat regulation that we have to have some cooling spaces. So we really need to take a look at our systems and prioritize them. So what we talked about is after the summer and into the fall, we'll be substantially complete for phase 2 of the capital project. So we'll reevaluate our lessons learned, what are the priorities that have been identified through the close of that. And then we'll also have that audit underway as well. So we'll go out to the voters in May to establish a new capital reserve. So after this year's financial audit, I'll have an idea of fund balance and where we're at. And then of course, we're mindful throughout the year. So it'll probably be another 10-year and we'll be able to list. It's pretty generic when we go out to the voters, just in case things change. It gives us the ability to make modifications within reason, but it's a general idea of what the priorities are going to be. So that'll be the ask for May of 2026. So that's our first priority. So I'm not making any recommendations for that yet, but just know that that's coming, but the voters have to say yes first. The next priority, they're on the back page. The next priority is EBLAR. So that's employee benefits and accrued liability reserve. So what that is our retirement incentives are based on unused sick time. So we have to pay those out. It's in all of our contracts with the exception of CSCA, because CSCA is paid out regardless of whether they retire or if it's for separation, unless it's for cause. So every year there's a calculation that is completed. And there's different assumptions for CPA and CTA because it's not 100%. They're not guaranteed that payment if they don't retire from the district. CSCA is calculated at 100%, and then we book that accrual each year in the financials. And so we talked about the liability is over $2 million, but we only have $400,000 set aside for that. So there's a new standard, government accounting standard 101. And so what that said is basically if you expect there's a 50% or more chance that you're gonna pay it out, you need to calculate it at 100%. So that was a change to our philosophy. So I had to recalculate last year's as a starting point, and then I'll calculate this year's, and then we'll book the difference. So I did recalculate last year's, it's $126,000 more than we thought. So instead of a $2.7 million liability, it's 2.8. So my funding recommendation, we would have funded it last year, but we didn't know what that was gonna be. So I didn't want to fund it. I'd be overfunded. It's not a good situation. So the recommendation is gonna be 1 million. And that'll get us at 1.42. The liability is over $2 million, so that's a comfortable recommendation. So that'll be on the next agenda. What we also said was a priority was tax certs. So we had a large pending tax cert. We do expect that that is going to be settled, so there's no recommendation to fund that reserve. And so that leaves TRS. And TRS, we do them to fund each year. That's a known expense, we have to pay it. So the recommendation is gonna be $350,000. That's based off of 24, 25 salaries. It's 2% of those salaries, and it can't be more than 10%. So we're close to being fully funded in that reserve. So we've been funding it each year. And we're very close to that being fully funded. That's great news. So next time you meet, you'll have 2 recommendations. You'll have one for EVLAR for 1 million, and then you'll have one for TRS for 350,000.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, my turn. First, before we get to the agenda portion, I just wanted to take a moment and congratulate our principal Tarlo for receiving her doctorate recently. So Dr. Tarlo, congratulations. Does the board have any items on tonight's agenda that they would like to discuss? Seemingly a very large agenda, lots of our annual contracts on here, some employment pieces. Also, we will be looking to appoint a new assistant principal for the high school, so we're very excited about that to welcome you here. Does the community have any items on the agenda they would like to discuss? Okay. If no discussion, then can I get a motion that the Board of Education adopt the following resolutions of the July 30th agenda and addenda 6A through U, 7A through DD, and 8A.
Make a motion.
Thank you.
Mr. Duffy,
Yes.
Mr. Gross,
Yes.
Burwell,
Yes.
and Mrs. Geller.
Yes.
And at this time, I would like to welcome Assistant Cohoes High School Principal and Principal Darnell Douglas. Thank you. Things Dr. Tarlo said during, after the interview was how energized, the whole process, the interview. We really feel we really look forward to your contributions, and so we're excited to have you with us. And so it's.
Okay, any comments from board on anything else not agenda related? Couple of items you've had up paper distributed to you just with some calendar dates for board meetings. So those will be future meetings. We'll be looking at approving those coming up here. Obviously, we know that, very difficult for all of us to get to all of them. But if there's any date that stands out to you, please feel free and reach out to Ashley. And so we can just at least know to make sure that we have quorum on those days. I just wanted to mention, we had, as some of you know, we get backup for all of these meeting items and minutes. Just one of the things I wanted to note, there have been a couple of budget transfer issues, so like with missing documentation, we can take a look. Items, just details. Also, we were going to talk about goal setting, which you brought up today. So we usually do an annual review of our goals. So just wanted to see what kind of timeline you were thinking as far as that next meeting, to just have a brief discussion. I don't suspect that there is going to be a huge amount of change. You know, we really have put the work in over the last couple of years, but I want to make sure that we address it at least, through the annual summer review process.
Prepare slides.
Are there any comments from the audience tonight regarding anything? Okay, we had second reading tonight of 3 different policies: school district records, media relations, and students and personal electronic devices. Dates for future meetings: August 13th and the 27th, right here at Cohoes Middle School Library at 6 p.m. Can I get a motion to enter into executive session at 7:15 p.m. to discuss matters leading to the appointment, employment, motion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation, and to discuss legal matters?
Make a motion.
Mr. Batson?
Yes.
Mr. Cohoes?
Yes.
Mrs. Burrow?
Yes.
And Mrs. Geller?
Yes. Thank you very much for coming. We do not plan on returning.